Hello learners, let us start the video where we left last time. So last time we were discussing how to start a career in forensic accounting. Now, if we want to start a career in forensic accounting, we have to decide a domain. What domain we want to go. Last time we also discussed that there are two domains. One is the preventive area of forensics, that is the proactive forensics, and the next one is detective area, that is reactive forensics. Now let us discuss each of them into a little bit of detail. First, the preventive forensics. Now, when we say preventive forensics, as the word itself says, it is prevention of occurrence of a fraud. The moment we say prevention of occurrence of a fraud, the cost of this has to be less than the cost of detection. And it is easy for new entrants to start a career in this. But then the service has to be commoditized and the service has to be packaged as a product. You cannot go with a undecided service line. And then all the large accounting firms, they have a decided name or they have a dedicated name for preventive forensic service. The most popular preventive forensic service that can be offered is called as fraud risk assessment. Let me just clarify, there will be a lots of viewers who will be confusing the fraud risk assessment with internal control assessment. Please understand, fraud risk assessment is an extension of internal control assessment. Fraud risk assessment begins where internal control assessment ends. Yes, there are a lot of similarities because the steps are by and large common. You have to identify a risk, you have to put a risk weightage, you have to identify the probabilities, and then you have to address that risk. That is the commonality. However, the biggest differentiator between internal control assessment and fraud risk assessment is that whereas internal control assessment looks after the controls, lapsation in controls, fraud risk assessment, you have specific focus to identify the vulnerabilities and area which are prone to fraud. So it's not just control lapsations. Probably there may be a situation where people will be conniving together and they may be committing a fraud. That will be covered under fraud risk assessment. Now, there are certain steps on how to do fraud risk assessment. Probably we can discuss that with an example, but that I understand will require, it merits a detailed discussion. Let me just introduce the topics which will come in preventive forensics. So, as I said, fraud risk assessment, that is the most prevalent and most important part of preventive forensics. Then we have something called as due diligence. There's due diligence, legal due diligence, accounting due diligence. So I have seen one equity research organization which did an investigative assessment for a company, a listed company which went belly up after a certain point of time. They exposed that the company in question was claiming that it had a fair market share. Now, this research company, this equity research company, when they conducted a telephonic survey in interior part of the country, they came up with findings that the claimed market share by the so-called company was not actually true. So, what I say, this is a conventional investigation, but then this helped in preventing the fraud. Now, this can also fall on the lines of detection of fraud. But please understand, detection forensics is only when there is a symptom of fraud. There is an identified position that fraud has happened. Now, let us discuss little bit of detective forensics. As the name suggests, detective forensics has to do with investigation and finding of the frauds. When we say finding of the fraud, the certain questions which needs to answer in a situation like that would be how the fraud happened, who committed the fraud, why the fraud was committed, when the fraud was committed, and all other related questions. These questions have to be answered by solid evidence. Please understand, unlike the civil laws, the moment we say that a fraud has occurred, this invokes criminal proceedings on someone. The moment criminal proceedings are to be invoked, then the quality of evidence has to be superior when we compare with the civil laws. So, how do we say the quality of evidence has to be superior? Unlike the civil laws, where preponderance of justice is the maxim for discovery of evidence, in case of invoking civil laws, we have to have beyond reasonable doubt. The evidence has to prove the things beyond reasonable doubt. So, therefore, the quality of evidence in case of detective forensics has to be very superior. Now there are a lot of area where detective forensic can be used. So incidents reporting is the first area, financial statement fraud is another area. A lot of law enforcement agencies in India and abroad, they use the services of accountants now. Please understand, financial statements are complex documents. Unless and until someone is having detailed knowledge of accounts and finance, he or she cannot simply investigate a case. So, to investigate a complex fraud, knowledge of accounting is must. And accountants, chartered accountants, CPA, they are professionally trained in the accounting domain. With adding the forensic skills, they can help the law enforcement agencies to solve the problem. So, a lot of law enforcement agencies engage accountants to investigate the case. There are also matrimonial dispute, arbitration agreement, claim determination. So, probably a fire may have occurred and there must be a litigation between the insurance company and the insured, the claimant. Claimant may be claiming some amount, insurance company may be ready to settle some other amount, and then there has to be an amicable solution found out. So, in fact, we have worked in such cases as well. So the opportunities are immense, the opportunities are huge, both in preventive as well as the detective domain. But as I say, for new entrants, the preventive domain is relatively easy to crack, because if you happen to pitch detective services, in that case, the client, whosoever wishes to engage you, would like to see your body of work. And then, if you are a new practitioner, if you are new, someone who has just started the career, then it would be difficult for you to crack the case. See, it's simply like that. You cannot get a surgery performed by a doctor who may have got gold medals, who may have excelled in his education, but then he has not done practically any case. The confidence of the patient will shatter. Similarly, it goes here that the confidence of the client will not be there if you don't have the experience. All clients want their case to be handled by experienced hands. So, detective practice area is relatively difficult when compared with preventive practice area. Having said that, both are very exciting, both are very good. Once you have done few cases for preventive forensics, you will get a lot of confidence and academic reading. That is something which I strongly suggest. Please keep on reading. As I say, please keep on sharpening the X. You don't know when you'll get an opportunity. And when you land up your first case, trust me, you would not like to waste time reading. So please keep on reading. Once you have done a reasonable number of preventive cases, I'm sure you'll land up a detective case. The detective cases are glamorous, they are more satisfying, they are more professionally enriching, I would say. With this, all the best. Thank you so much.